In GS4, there's a topic called emotional intelligence. And in 2013, we had a question on emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence and how it can be developed among people? How does it help an individual in taking ethical decisions? In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through how to write an answer for this question. This is a pure answer writing video, and I will be doing this in 2 episodes. Episode 1, I'll talk about the concept of emotional intelligence, and episode 2, I'll talk about framing an answer. Before I start explaining the concept of emotional intelligence, let's take a look at the question. If you look at the question very carefully, there are 3 parts to the question. Part 1 is meaning of emotional intelligence. Part 2 is can you learn emotional intelligence? Part 3, how does emotional intelligence help you in ethical decision making? There are 3 parts to it. And this is a very interesting question. Why? Because the examiner is testing you at 3 levels. The examiner first is testing your understanding of emotional intelligence. Second, they're testing on can you learn it? And third one is can you apply it? So look at the sequence: meaning, learning, application. Let's start by understanding what is emotional intelligence. And I'm not going to get into the history or the evolution of the concept of emotional intelligence. I'm just going to talk about the meaning of the word emotional intelligence as scholars defined it. And the first scholar I'm going to use, or first set of scholars I'm going to use, is Peter Salovey and John Mayer. And they were the first to define it precisely. And their definition of emotional intelligence read somewhat like this. Emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate among them and use this information to guide one's thinking and action. If you read the definition very carefully, you'll notice this word ability. So that means what Salovey and May pointed out, that it's a skill. Emotional intelligence is a competency. And what kind of competency is it? It's a competency of using emotions. So there's 2 key words in the whole definition: ability and use. So the moment you say the word skill, the moment you say the word ability, that means this is something we can learn. So what Salovey and Mayer implied is emotional intelligence is a skill, it's an ability we all can learn. After Salovey and Mayer, I'll call on the next scholar. And the scholar happens to be Bar-On. And he had a very interesting definition. Emotional intelligence is an array of non-cognitive capabilities, competencies and skills that influence one's ability to succeed in coping with environmental demands and pressures. If you read the definition very carefully, focus on 2 words. First one is the word array. Array means it's a cluster. What Bar-On is pointing out is emotional intelligence is not one single skill or competency. It's a cluster of competencies, array. The second word I wanted to focus on is the word succeed. He says that EI, or emotional intelligence, helps us in succeeding. So that means to succeed in personal and professional life, what you need is not IQ alone. You also need something called emotional intelligence capabilities. After Salovey and Mayer and Bar-On, I'm going to call on a set of scholars. And in this set of scholars, there's one gentleman who I'd like to talk about. And he is Antonio Damasio. Damasio is a neuroscientist who worked a lot on the word emotion. And he adds a neuroscience perspective to the concept of emotional intelligence. And this set of scholars gave this definition. Emotional intelligence is a collection of emotional abilities that constitute a form of intelligence that is different from cognitive intelligence or IQ. If you read the definition carefully, you look at this word, different. Now, Antonio Damasio and his team made very, very clear that emotional intelligence is distinct or different from IQ. So the definition moves one step forward. So if you look at the whole 3 sets of definitions, the key words happens to be abilities, use, array, succeed, different. So that means EI is a set of skills that we humans can use to succeed in life. So we don't need IQ alone, we need emotional intelligence as well. That's what the sum of the three definitions are. Before we get into the second part of the question, can EI be developed or how to learn emotional intelligence? Let me talk about something else. Now, when I say emotional intelligence, it's a set of capabilities. So we need to understand what are the components, what are the abilities. Because if you have to answer this question of learning emotional intelligence, that means you have to learn the capabilities. For example, when you learn maths, what are the capabilities you're developing? You're developing your geometry capabilities. You're learning algebra, you're learning trigonometry, you're learning mensuration. So these are all different skills connected to maths. Similarly, emotional intelligence also is the same. When you have to learn emotional intelligence, you have to learn some abilities. The issue with components is the same as it was with the definitions. Almost every scholar have their own list of competencies. For example, Salovey and Mayer, they believe that emotional intelligence is about 4 skills, 4 competencies, and these 4 skills are perceiving emotions, using emotions, understanding emotions, and managing emotions. 4 skills. Let's take Baron for example. Baron spoke about 5 components, 5 abilities, and these 5 are further broken down into smaller subset skills. 5, and these 5 are intrapersonal, interpersonal, adaptability, stress management, and general mood. Next, Daniel Goleman, one of the most popular scholars on emotional intelligence. If you go to any bookshop anywhere in the world and the moment you ask for a book on emotional intelligence, what you'll get is Daniel Goleman's book. And Daniel Goleman spoke about emotional intelligence as a cluster of 4 abilities. First one, self-awareness. Second one, self-management. Third one, social awareness. Fourth one, relationship management. Now, just take a look at all the 3. What you see is everybody has given out a different set of components. So that's a challenge. If you look at all the 3 scholars, all the 3 sets of scholars, what you see is everybody identified a different set of emotional competencies. Now, this is why when you write answers, it becomes challenging. Because you cannot list out all the competencies. You have to pick and choose while writing answers. And the best way to do that is identifying some common emotional competencies. These are the core components, or I should say common components, which you'll identify if you read all the 3 sets carefully. Self-awareness, managing emotions, social awareness, which also implies empathizing with others, managing relationships with others, which is more about interpersonal relations. Now that we have understood the meaning of emotional intelligence, we identify the competencies. A bigger question: can you learn to be emotionally intelligent? Is it possible to develop emotional intelligence? That's a bigger question. And that's second part of the question also. So before I get into this, I want you all to take a minute and understand, think about this question. Can we all learn to be emotionally intelligent? Interestingly, almost all scholars agree that emotional intelligence is an ability that people can learn. Unlike the definition where there were differences, here there's an agreement. We all can learn, we all can develop our emotional abilities. Now the question is how to do that. And for that, I'm going to give you a simple 3-step process. The first step towards becoming emotionally intelligent starts with recognizing the emotions. For example, when was the last time you recognized your emotions? Suppose if I ask you a simple question, what are the emotions you experienced today since morning? I'm sure you'll keep thinking. I'm sure when you think, you'll just point out few emotions, like you'll say happiness, you'll say anger, But no, boss, you've experienced a whole gamut of emotions. For example, your mother serves food, mother serves you vegetables that you don't like. You have the disgusting emotion in your face. Emotion? Can you recognize these emotions? That's the first step. The second step is to label that emotion. Just imagine you walk into an interview room and the interviewer asks you, how are you feeling? And I'm sure 99% of the candidates will end up saying, good, sir. I'm asking you, how are you feeling? You tell me, how are you feeling? I'm not asking you, are you good or bad? I'm asking you, how are you feeling? That's a sign that you're emotionally challenged. Why can't you label that emotion? Oh, I'm excited to be here in the interview. I'm a little nervous, sir. Oh, I have little anxiety. Label. The next step is to label that emotion. What are you feeling exactly? Most of the time we're never angry. We're just irritated. Most of the time you're not sad. You're just disappointed. Let's come down to the third stage, managing it. Now that you know, okay, I'm experiencing this emotion and this emotion happens to be jealousy, you labeled it. Now that you know, oh, I am jealous at this moment, now you'll find a way to manage your jealousies. Now look at the sequence. You know your emotions, you label it, and once you label it, you'll try to control or manage that emotion much better. You'll try to minimize the impact of that emotion on your behavior. You'll try to manage how that emotion impacts your decisions. That's the third stage. What I gave you is a very simple 3-step process. I recognize, I label, I manage. If you want a much more detailed understanding of how to develop emotional intelligence, I can recommend a wonderful book. In fact, it's a book worth reading if you really are keen to develop emotional intelligence skills. And the book is called Emotionally Intelligent Manager, as written by Peter Salovey and David Caruso. It's a book worth reading. In fact, there's a whole chapter on how to develop emotional intelligence. Do read that chapter. We have explored the meaning of emotional intelligence and identified how to develop emotional competencies. Now let's come down to the third part of the question. And the third part of the question is about how does EI help in ethical decision making? This will be the subject of next episode. And along with this, I am also going to discuss how to frame answers. Till then, happy learning.